Howdy dirt riders, Enduro Bandit coming at you on the tube today with a full review of my 2017 Yamaha YZ250X 2-stroke dirt bike. I've put 13.7 hours on the hour meter since buying the bike, so I decided it's time to do a full review after really getting to know the bike. It's gone above and beyond my expectations. Just the most fun and capable bike I've ever ridden. I wouldn't have any other bike in the world than this bike. The new decal kit, you probably noticed, I've actually put 5 hours on the hour meter since putting that decal kit on. And you'll see the videos from those two rides coming up. It's kind of like fast forwarding to the review, because I figured why wait, right? So yeah, Co1 Graphic, I'd like to thank them for the amazing looking graphics kit. The numbers and my name are no extra charge. They're $150, these decal kits, high quality 3M. They work through eBay. You can customize the number and your name like I mentioned, so that's a bonus. They have lots of different decal kits to choose from, not just for this bike. They have plenty of different bikes including KTMs, Husqvarnas, you know, all that. Anyway, on to the bike. I'm gonna start at the front and move to the back, try and cover everything and the upgrades that I've done to the bike. Starting with the grips, I've upgraded to Pro Taper pillow tops. I've always used these. They're much more soft and comfortable, and my fingers don't get cramped up with them. With the stock grips, I went on one ride with them and my fingers were cramping up really bad and getting sore, so definitely a worthwhile switch. I've also put some MSR bush guards on. The hand guards are by Enduro Engineering because I couldn't find any actual MSR plastics for them at the time. But I always like these MSR bush guards because the inserts are reusable and they're a bit cheaper than the other alternatives like a Kirby's, which don't even have reusable inserts. So every time you want to change your grips or take these off, then you got to buy new inserts sometimes. That costs 15 bucks. So let's move on to the brakes. They're very responsive, smooth. They don't have to travel far to get on full brake, but they're also very controllable. And the front brake has no chance of locking up unexpectedly. Some dirt bikes, the front brake will lock up unexpectedly and it's chronic. Like with betas, that's a chronic issue. Let's move on to the clutch lever. I'm very happy with it for a cable clutch. It's almost as light pull as a hydraulic KTM clutch, but I'd rather have it because it's more reliable than a hydraulic clutch. It has a softer pull than the YZ250. They put softer springs in it. Let's move on to the suspension. It's KYB, best in the business. I'm very happy with it. The forks, they're a bit stiff for my preference, so is the back. So I clicked them out 3 clicks from stock settings, so they're at 16 clicks out of 20, and that's working good for me. The front tire grips well, doesn't break traction unexpectedly. I've been running a little bit high PSI in my tires because some of the terrain I run has a lot of sharp rocks and roots, so I don't want to pinch a tube, but the tire's really working great. Even at high PSIs, like 12 is fairly high for a front tire, but that's what I'm running. Yeah, nothing wrong with the rotors or anything. I'm very happy with the brakes, like I said. So I've added Unibiker radiator guards. They've been holding up well. This side took one hard hit, but I don't think it really bent anything. I think if I hadn't had the radiator guards, it might have bent this radiator. But yeah, they've got lots of airflow, and but I haven't had any issues with those. So for the pipe, I did buy a cheap pipe guard from eBay. I tried to get a higher quality Moose Racing pipe guard, but it was too thick for me to bend at this angle since it doesn't bend like a U with this bike. This one's working pretty good. I haven't taken any hard hits though on my pipe yet, just a few small ones, and yeah, it's working good. Let's talk about the engine. It has lower compression from the YZ250. That was the difference that they made in it to help with low end power, and people misinterpret that sometimes as dropping the horsepower, but actually this engine has 2 horsepower more, I've read, than the YZ250, and amazing low end power for a 2-stroke that's based off an MX bike. This bike will just crawl up hills. The only time that it really doesn't have enough power to pull the tall first gear up hills is when you're on tight, gnarly single track and you don't have any room to get momentum at the hill. Then you're gonna have to be feathering the clutch a bit to make it up. But that's really just because they didn't change first gear from the MX model. So we're talking about the transmission now. First gear is quite tall, like I mentioned. Second gear is also tall, they didn't change them. Third gear is a bit tighter, also usable for flowy little trails. Fourth and fifth are more for fire roads. You're really flying in fourth and fifth because they're quite tall gears. Fifth gear, I can barely ever top it out because there aren't very many roads that are smooth enough and straight enough for me to really get it up there, but I've pinned it and got it to top speed a few times. It will hit 144 kilometers an hour according to spec. That's the top speed. So I've also put on an Emperor Racing skid plate. I really like these little scorpions that have engraved on it. I would highly recommend it. These skid plates are made in Canada. Very high quality. They have a hole for the oil drainage. The carburetor tuning I haven't even touched, and the bike has just been running perfectly. So that's really good, because I know that some of the KTMs they have that issue where they changed from Cayenne over to McCuney, and that was like a downgrade. And the reason why they did that on the newer KTMs is because Honda owns big shares in Cayenne, and they didn't want KTM using their carbs anymore. So that's what Cayenne did. They kicked them out, and now they're using McCuneys, and people are having trouble tuning the carbs with those. So, but not Yamaha. They're still on Cayenne and running strong. So I would recommend, if you do a lot of tight single track, to upgrade to like a 51 or 52 tooth sprocket to tighten up your first and second gears. Well, tighten up all the gears, but really what you need is tighter first and second. I'm happy with second personally because it happens to fall at the right speed for all the trails that I do that aren't single track. I'm using second the most, and third. So I'm happy with second, but first is just a bit too tall. So you're just idling all over the place, and it'll chug up those hills and stuff. It has really good low end power. So this engine has a pretty linear power band. Very usable for the woods. The low end hits right away and you're crawling, and it has no problem idling around single track. But sometimes, like I said, you're working the clutch pretty hard going up hills that you can't get momentum at. So that's why you need to upgrade your sprocket from a 50 to a 51 or 52, and it'll be just perfect. There's only been a few times that I've even had to work the clutch a bit because it has such good power right from the bottom. Then it softens up a bit. About quarter way through it starts softening the power a bit, and then about 2/3 way through the power band hits, and then you're really ripping all the way to the top. So I'm very happy with the kind of power this engine makes. Let's talk about the Airbox. So this Airbox, it works good, obviously. They have it designed for a lot of airflow, but at the same time, water can get in there. If you're not careful washing the bike, then quite a bit of water will go in through the holes on each side, plus there's a big hole at the bottom. So also with dust, I notice if I'm following other riders on a dusty day, There will be quite a bit of dust getting in there, and the air filter will be like black by 2 hours ride time. So that's expected with a lot of bikes, but my IT200 didn't have that issue. The KDX 200 didn't have it as bad either, but this is an MX bike style, so kind of makes sense. They want as much airflow as possible, so I'm not really going to gripe about that. The reserve tank, I've only hit it once on my last ride at 2.4 hours. But in total on this tank, I'm pretty sure you could squeak out 3 hours total. It holds 8 liters. I did go to 2.3 hours twice on 2 other rides, and I didn't hit the reserve, so I'm quite confident that 2.4 is the point where the reserve is hitting. I'm not on the pipe constantly, but I'm on the pipe about half the time, so it's a good median for where I'm at anyway. It's about what you'd be at if you're doing the kind of trails I'm doing. So, and this tank doesn't even hold that much, so it really helps with weight reduction. A lot of the guys I'm riding with, they have 10 and 11 liter tanks, but they would run out before mine, like quite a ways before mine, because they're guzzling way more gas. This bike is really good on gas for a 2-stroke, carbureted. Let's move to the back. The rear shock, I'm very pleased with it. I did make some adjustments. I made it a bit softer. I did the rider sag adjustment, and so it's a bit soft on the soft side, but it's set for my weight, so I'm happy with it. What you want for trail riding is 102 to 103 millimeters for rider sag. You can research how to do it. And my static sag is at 39, so I'm on the soft end of the scale, but that's what I'm used to. That's what I like. Same with the front. I'm on the soft end of the scale, but I don't need all the whole harder suspension setup because I'm not hitting massive jumps. The most air I'm getting really is like 1.5 meters, maybe a little bit more. As far as the muffler goes, I'm using an FMF Turbine Core 2. I made that upgrade before even riding the bike because I want a spark arrestor in there. It's not legal for me to ride without one, and the stock muffler doesn't have a spark arrestor. I like the sound of the stock muffler more because it's a bit higher pitch. A lot of people like the FMF sound more, it's more throaty. But yeah, it doesn't really have a performance increase. It is a lot lighter than the other muffler, slimmer. So yeah, no problems with that. The stock tires on this bike provide a ton of grip. The bike is balanced perfectly. This is how far I've worn down the tread after 13.7 hours. There's a few cuts, not too bad, about what you'd expect. Some of the single track is really gnarly. And that's really where I started to shred the tire. Other than that, these tires hold up really well. Dunlop Geomax, and it's got an 18-inch rear rim to help keep from pinching the tube. Because with the average MX bike, they've got a 19-inch if you didn't know. It does have a disc guard back here, stock. That's another difference from the normal YZ250, I'm pretty sure. I find that this bike really makes good traction for a 2-stroke. I've never ridden a 2-stroke bike that keeps traction so well. When you hit the power band, when you want it to break traction, it will break traction enough to swing the rear wheel out a bit. But really, like, this is ideal what you want. Verging on like 4-stroke traction here. Let's talk about a few things I don't like about this bike, which there's very few of. First off, shifting between first and second. This bike really likes to hit neutral. It's very easy to find neutral on this bike. Especially when you're shifting down, you want to double shift to make sure you're hitting first. Shifting from first to second, it rarely hits neutral. It's a very smooth shifting bike. Don't get me wrong there. It's perfectly smooth couldn't be smoother. Very happy with that, but this is just a chronic Yamaha issue. It was like that on my IT200 also. You just want to double shift it when you're shifting down to first, or you're probably going to hit neutral. So, alright, the seat. This is another issue. This is how it is with pretty much all new bikes though. All new dirt bikes are like this, it seems. They have very hard, firm seats. They're tough, but they have very little give. And there's two different ways you can go about fixing this. You can drill holes in the foam so that it's a bit softer, but you got to take it apart for that. I can't take mine apart without buying a staple gun or taking it to a shop to get done. So what I did, which this is in my opinion the best way to deal with it, is buy a pair of gel biker shorts from Amazon.ca. I got them for only $24. The brand that I went with was Tomshoo, Tomshoo. They're one of the cheaper ones, but they work really good. They're as good as any of the other ones, really. And my butt is not sore anymore at all. It's not like I'm even sitting on the seat that much, really. I'm standing on the bike lots, but these seats are just so hard. My friends have also ridden this bike, and they really didn't like the seat either. That's how you can deal with it. And the third and final issue I have with this bike is the high seat height from the ground. I forget how high it is. It's like 38 point something inches. That's a little tall for me because I'm on my tippy toes really with this bike. This bike has really good ground clearance, so that's a positive thing. But when you're on really tight terrain or on the side of like an uneven ridge or something, slanted hill, you just gotta make sure you lean the bike towards the upward side of the hill so that in case if you lose your footing, if you have to go really slow, that way you won't tip over and tumble down. And yeah, for tight single track it is kind of an issue if you're on your tippy toes, but you just gotta really keep the bike moving, work on your balance. Basically it's just seat time will fix this issue, and I barely ever drop this bike because it's just that kind of bike where once you get in the groove, she's really ripping. And I'm just so happy with this bike. The top speed on it is so impressive. I'm pretty sure it's even with the KTM 300 XCW. For price, you can't beat it really compared to the competition. I was able to get mine for $7,300. I already bought the rear sprocket for it, but I haven't put it on. The 51 tooth is what I went with. So that was about $90, and that's an upgrade I would recommend you to do if you do technical riding. Help tighten up that first gear. So, but really in total I put $800 into it. So in total I'm at $8,100 put into the bike with all the upgrades I've done. Another thing I've done that I didn't mention in this video is I put Motion Pro fork bleeders on, because you gotta bleed your forks because they build up pressure after every ride. You just press the little button. You can do that without putting those in. You just gotta unscrew the little screws there. No problem at all. So yeah, like I was saying, I got $8,100 into it. Since I bought this bike in winter, I was able to get it for $7,300, like I said. So that's an amazing deal, really. These things go for 8,500 Canadian at full price in my area, compared to a KTM 250X CW or XC. Those, on the other hand, are 10,200. The only real difference they have are a headlight and an electric start, and that's really the only two things it has on this bike. I wouldn't even count the bigger tank because that just adds weight, and who goes riding longer than 3 hours really? Barely anybody. So the electric start That's another thing that a lot of people lean more towards the KTMs and European bikes for, because this bike doesn't have it. As far as I'm concerned, I don't want electric start. That's gonna add more weight. Same with the headlight. Last time I had a headlight on a bike, it got friggin' smashed in by a tree. So that's just another thing that can break. Plus you've got all that wiring. I've had my electric start light on fire inside a dirt bike before. All these things are just extra dead weight, if you ask me. This bike starts first kick. How often are you going to be stuck on the side of a hill climb, not able to take your foot off the ground to kick the kickstart? Only when you stall the bike. You just need to learn to keep the bike moving. Feather that clutch. And it'll teach you to do that when you don't have an electric start. So that's just my opinion. I know a lot of you guys really like the comfort of the electric start and the headlight and all that. And I used to think, hey, you gotta have a headlight. What if you end up staying out later than you expected? Well, just make sure you go riding a little bit earlier so you give yourself an extra hour time in case you end up coming home late. Or you can pack a flashlight that hooks right onto the handlebar here for $20 or less, just as a backup in case you end up coming home late. So you don't need that headlight. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you found it helpful. I'm not trying to poo-poo the European dirt bikes. I just have different preferences, and I'm trying to help you guys understand why. So I really appreciate you guys watching, and thanks for subbing to my channel. Stay tuned for more videos.